Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we're learning how to guard our minds against all of the manipulations, attacks, and attempts at mind and behavior control that we come under here in the 21st century. Tonight, I am going to continue our discussion about the concept of Psyops. Now, this is the third video in this little series, but it really is a culmination of most, if not all, of the discussions that we've had on this channel so far. As I sat down to write this, it struck me that what we've been discussing up until now really are the ways in which entities who are in the business of conducting Psyops understand, target, and carry out their methods of manipulation. There are many components to this, ranging from psychological, cultural, educational, and many, many others, even the supernatural. We have been building up a knowledge base that is meant to help us track and identify the various kinds of psyops that occur in our daily life. Soon, we'll be able to dig deep into any new operation that gets rolled out and put it through a kind of test to see just what is hiding under the surface layer of the stories that we're being told. As we discussed last week, it's through the telling of various stories that the controllers of the information that we're being fed in the mainstream media, and even now the independent media, that various narratives or points of view get crafted. Remember that when it comes to narrative creation, the stories that we're told are the means of communicating any sort of meaning which various narratives may be trying to engender in a person or group. That is the main job of the media, whether it be news, media, or whatever, to tell the kinds of stories which elicit the kinds of responses in people which aid to further whatever narrative is desired or is attempted to be communicated. When we think of propaganda and the means of spreading messages through the tactics developed by Bernays and those like him, we see that they were clearly in tune with the fact that people would respond to the images and stories by changing their behavior and in turn their thinking. All that needs to be done is to target the parts of human psychology where our identities are formed and developed. If that can be affected in any way, a person or group is put on the fast track toward behavior modification and thought control. There are other ways that this is accomplished, many of which are quite nuanced and can be traced back to the once secret projects carried out by the US military under the project named MK Ultra. We will eventually get into some of that material, but for now, it's important to recognize that the topics that we've covered in every single video are all connected to the means by which stories and narratives are deployed on a population in order to control the behavior of its members. Each part matters and each point of data is integral to the whole picture. Today, what we see is a massive machine which pumps out story after story in order to promote, suppress, alter, confuse, or enhance any number of narratives which keep people focused on things which hold our attention, such that we remain distracted from the kinds of corruption and evil that are working to control the world. With the advent of sophisticated data harvesting technologies, the stories can be highly tailored to target individuals and their personal psychological triggers. Each person's internal sense of identity is where the most amount of influence can be gained over their thinking. We learned in a previous set of videos that our physical environment in the 21st century is unlike anything any previous generations of humanity has ever had to navigate. This is due to the ubiquity of electronic devices that are in some way connected to wireless internet systems and data communication networks. There are all kinds of devices like smartphones, smartwatches, and tablets, biometric rings, fitness trackers, Even our home appliances are connected to this massive web of data collection technology. What this means is that it is virtually impossible to go anywhere without giving up some form of personal information in the form of electronic data, much of the time without your full consent of what is being done. And we have discussed the ways that this happens through the continual pulsing of low-level electromagnetic radio waves, which pass through human cell tissue, sending signals back to the source of the frequencies, which get turned into data. This is then collected and deployed through various algorithms which are designed to accomplish all sorts of goals. The most immediate of which is to market products and increase consumerism in all areas of society. We all know how targeted ads have become as much a part of everyone's day as any other routine, mundane moment. We get out of bed, we get ready for the day, put on our shoes, and by the time we start whatever we have planned, the ads have been firing non-stop, sending us coupons and savings and strangely specific products that seem to line up exactly with the things that are missing in our refrigerator, or pertain directly to the conversation that we just had in the line for coffee. That's because our environment is constantly and continually gaining information on who we are, what we like, want, fear, and hate. This information is used to build up a digital version of each and every person who has any connection to the Internet of Things whatsoever. If you've engaged with any social media platform or even used a smartphone to check your email, there's a digital version of you floating around out there in the ones and zeros that encode the web. This version of you serves as a sort of secondary identity, which, in a way, acts as the main identity through which we are targeted by the algorithms, which, 1, advertise and market products to us, and 2, make sure that we always see the kinds of stories which deepen and ingrain the attributes which make up the identity being built through that data capture. As we've discussed before, the more layers of this identity which can be known and triggered, the more influence any entity will have over the individual or group being targeted. This mass-scale data collection is a very serious concern of mine. The main reason for this is the fact that given the way things are going and the ever-increasing use of wireless technology, the invasive nature of the data mining is really unavoidable. Data has become the new oil in the global economy. The amount of money to be made is absolutely staggering, and with each person being a constant stream of income, there's no way of turning the ship around and returning to a paradigm where big data was not so integral to our society and our systems. With the rapid rollout of AI over the past 5 years, this is only going to get more and more crazy. Since it's true that these systems and technologies aren't going away, we need to learn to understand them as best we can. We need to know what they're doing, and we need to know what we are giving away to the companies and entities behind all of this data collection. We will return to the technical aspects of that issue in later videos. For this video, it's important to understand that all of this data is used to create the stories that we're told today in the 21st century. These stories inform our personal narrative, and there's a very real danger that these narratives have been crafted by forces that are not native to our own minds. This is where the concepts that we discussed in the education series come into play. There has been a decades-long effort to weaken the minds of the people in this country and others to the point that they can be programmed in ways which ensure a certain worldview is adopted and held to, without ever questioning why it's important to an individual or where those thoughts came from. We trust that our systems of education, government, and the institutions behind them ultimately have our best interests at the core, And so we accept the stories that we're told. Or at least that was the prevailing narrative of the last century. I'm seeing this shift in ways that I find interesting, where younger people are incredibly distrustful of institutional power in government and in education, and are now calling for the entire system to be torn down so we can usher in a new one built on equity and fairness. The irony is, that was always the goal of the social programmers like John Dewey, and it's taken this long for the plans to make their way through the populace. That's the thing about Psyops. If you're not constantly checking to see if your thoughts are indeed your own, there's no telling who or what actually crafted the story you may be telling yourself that is informing your worldview. This is why these things are so dangerous. It's also the perfect sort of method to exploit the darkest parts of our nature in order to ensure that we fall in line with the control agenda. This is where the material from People of the Lie comes into play. Since we all live with a sinful nature, it's easy to exploit our natural tendencies and ensure that we will continue in those darker behavioral patterns. Since our more narcissistic and selfish parts are the most easily controllable through feeding the supply that we crave, it's no surprise that the stories we're told are such that they lead us to form our own personal narratives around those aspects of our identity. If you've ever wondered why the world seems to continue further into an ever more bleak and desperately wicked state, I suggest you consider that there are forces whose sole aim is to ensure that progression so that they can maintain power and control over as many minds as possible. Our sinful state is the doorway through which we allow the evil of this world to control us. We choose this every time we place our own will above that of the will of God, serving ourselves instead of being the salt of the earth. Now, I don't want this to cause people to give up the fight, but rather to take up their cross and shoulder the responsibility of sharpening our minds, of learning how to think well and spot the mechanisms of control wherever they rise up, of fortifying our resolve to not give in to the allure of convenience in daily life and the abdication of responsibility for owning every thought, behavior, and interaction. To make it our personal mission to live fully owning every aspect of our humanity and doing all that we can to submit our will to the will of God and let His truth guide our thoughts and hearts. That is how we will protect ourselves from the manipulations of the stories of the day. That is how we will endure to the end and maintain ourselves in truth. We will continue this work here by talking about all of these things, by trying to shed light on the evils of the day and build up each other so that we maintain our footing in these dangerous times. To be clear, this has nothing to do with politics, liberals or conservatives, teams and mascots. This is about minds, hearts, and souls. We need Jesus more than ever, and with His help, I know that we can overcome the times we're in. So until next time, stay safe, stay diligent, and stay vigilant, keeping your minds on guard.